What a Sunday, week 14. The Rams, 86 points scored, top the Bills. The Vikings, Sam Darnold may have the day of his life. Seattle Seahawks take control of the NFC West. The Dolphins finally decide to go back to leaning on Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And the Eagles narrowly escape the Panthers. Let's talk about the biggest takeaways from the week 14 action. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, sponsored by DraftKings Pick 6 and Live Golf. I'm Jim Coventry. You can catch me on the X at Jim Coventry NFL. Instant reaction number one. The Rams beat the Bills in a thriller, 44-42. So the Rams, this is the one thing, and I got hammered on my picks this week, 0-3, terrible week. I always said this, the Rams, you never know which version of them is going to show up for a game. And that's a lesson learned. I have to stop putting bet suggestions on any game that involves the Rams because basically throw everything out because none of it matters. There are weeks Sean McVay's team just doesn't show up, and other weeks they can't be stopped. Good luck predicting it. Give the Rams credit. This is a huge, huge win for the Rams. The Rams, with this win, keep close to the Seahawks, we'll talk about later. Matthew Stafford gets a late, almost a garbage time touchdown. They were kind of close it out, counts. It would have been a typical Stafford game. Almost 300 yards would have been one touchdown. He got the late one. So fortunately for fantasy, if you played him, it worked out great. Kyren Williams, back to his end zone ways. He had a little dry spell a few weeks ago. 87 yards, 29 carries. So again, the efficiency, not great, but he punches in 2 touchdowns. Williams hasn't been big in the receiving game for a while. 2 catches, 10 yards is okay. But remember, he used to be heavily involved. Not the case anymore. But the receivers. And here's the thing. We talk about Stafford. Stafford can almost put a big yardage. This week he had 2 touchdowns, like hardly 1 touchdown or less. And yet Nakua and Kupp can still go off for fantasy. And it's the weirdest thing because normally if you got 2 receivers functioning at a high level, the quarterback has to go with them. Again, this week it worked, but normally that's not the case. So you got some friends now. Alan Soslowski's in the house. You got Randy in the house. Eric's now is welcome, everybody. So in this game, the Rams got the lead in the second quarter, and they never relinquished it. They kept the pressure on the Bills, and that was what they needed to do. They never let the Bills get that lead, so the Bills had to play aggressively offensively, which is fine, but defensively, they just didn't have answers. And I knew going into this game, I mentioned a couple of things. The Bills play zone defense at a very high rate. And if they played man, and they have the corners to play man, if they would have switched up and played man, I thought they would have had a lot of success against this Rams offense that doesn't do great against man, especially with good corners. Styles make fights. Some coaches don't want to change their philosophies, and I get it. Bills are a great team. They were 10-2 going into this one. They were vying for the 1 seed. So they probably figured they were fine. They weren't. 44 points later, playing at LA. Of course, there's something with them being on the road, right? But that said, all it was basically the stars. It was, like I said, Kyren. It was Nakua. It was Kupp. Everybody else was an afterthought. Atwell got 3 for 45. Demarcus Robinson got banged up in this game and left. He had a great downfield catch taken away by a penalty, which would have given him something. If you started Demarcus Robinson, yeah, you got a goose egg. Not so we'll see what that injury is. He came into this game with a hand injury, but the Bills. So for fantasy, for the most part, if you started James Cook, and I listed Cook as a guy with upside this week because with the matchup, the Bills should have been able to assert their will. Their big offensive line should have had great success against a smaller Rams front seven. But that's what happens when you fall behind early in the game. You fall behind, Josh Allen attempts 37 passes. James Cook gets 6 rushing attempts, and there you have it. No opportunity to get a running game if you only get 6 carries. Cook added 2 catches for 9 yards. So basically, Cook did very little for you. And it was a game we thought it was a good matchup. Now, Josh Allen, you love it when he's trailing because Josh Allen rushes for 3 touchdowns, 82 yards on the ground, and that's not enough. He throws for 342 and 3 more touchdowns. So maybe he didn't catch his own touchdown this week. Saw that last week. But the dude accounts for 6 touchdowns in this game. What a massive fantasy day. If you were counting on Josh Allen to carry you into your fantasy playoffs or into a bye, he probably had a good way of getting you there. It was nice to see Amari Cooper, 14 targets. Now, I don't think he would have gotten there if they weren't trailing that much. 6 for 95. He'll definitely take that. Shakir, nice touchdown. Sped through the defenders. I believe that was a 51-yarder. It was a long one. And that got him to 106 yards and a touchdown. But a great catch, and he showed that speed off straight up the middle, took it in. So he cashes in. Matt Collins, look, at some point, he's going to go away, but he hasn't gone away yet. Doesn't usually get many. 6 targets. Big game for him target-wise. Goes 4 for 57 and a touchdown. Can't count on him. But if you're in a super deep league, right now, if you're stuck and you have no other options, now the bye weeks are over, so you might not need him so much. But, there's that. So, but that's the way it goes. So Buffalo, again, great fantasy game. You loved it for fantasy, unless you were facing a lot of Bills and Rams. That might have been a little bit of a problem. But again, what a great game. We love when these NFL games perk up the points, and we totally had them go here. As I forgot to move my microphone where it needs to be, and I just did. Sorry about that. All right, let's get to our instant real quick on the Bills. So right now, the Bills it's a non-conference game, but they still trail the Chiefs. Right now, Chiefs play this evening. They play Sunday night, about 20 minutes from the time we're on right now. And if the Chiefs beat the Chargers, they're up 2 games. And there's like 4 left. So this big loss could really hurt the Bills' ability to get that 1 seed. And as we know, that could determine the participant in the Super Bowl. See how that works. Like I said, the Rams 7-6 talked about earlier. They're hanging with the Seahawks. We'll see how that winds up for us. All right, let's go to instant reaction number 2. Sam Darnold may have had the day of his life in a 42-21 win over the Falcons. Now, I told people to start Darnold this week. It was a great week to start him. And here's the thing with him. Now, the Falcons got 4 sacks. Typically, the Falcons don't get pressure. And when Darnold doesn't get pressure, he could be amazing. He made some good throws under pressure in this game. There's more pressure than we expected. But again, there's not enough consistent pressure, and Darnold took full advantage of it. And that Atlanta secondary was not going to have answers for Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. Now, Addison leads the team with 12 targets. Jefferson only gets 7. And that's still a problem. Jefferson is not getting the amount of targets he needs to get, but he had one of his best games of the season. So both of the receivers, 132 yards for Jefferson, 133 for Addison. 2 touchdowns for Jefferson. Not to be outdone, Jordan Addison gets 3 touchdowns. So here it was very narrow, right? It was Darnold for 347 and 5. All but 82 of those yards through the air went to Addison and Jefferson. If you played Hockenson, you got a 4 for 45. You can live with that. You'd like better, but 4 for 45, nobody's arguing. And then Aaron Jones scores a late touchdown. So he gets it done. Aaron Jones ends up with 84 scrimmage yards, a couple catches, and a touchdown. Again, not a ceiling game, but out of your running back 2, what Aaron Jones probably is, yeah, you are not going to complain about that. Minnesota's not going to have many games like this, but I pointed out all year. When I said, I'll repeat it. When Darnold has a game in which we know they're not probably going to see a lot of pressure, you love the offense. You go with that offense because there's real big upside. If we see games on the schedule where they're potentially going to be under siege, the upside gets significantly limited. And that even hurts Aaron Jones as well. So that's just something very, very important to talk about. Atlanta side of the ball, look, I know the fantasy community and some football fans are calling for Kirk Cousins to be benched, and they want Michael Penix. And I'll just say this. We have no idea what Michael Penix is. We saw him in college. Great. He runs a practice squad. The team knows. The team knows what they have. And maybe he is really good. But maybe the team also saw something they're not quite sure. Kirk Cousins didn't play bad here. He threw 2 picks. One of them was a great Brian Flores decides coverage. The backer dropped back at the perfect time, and it led to an interception. That was what Brian Flores does. And it's like simulated. It's all simulated. You have it look a certain way at the snap, and then it changes up. You can't fault that in Cousins. Now, they were chasing points, so Cousins throws for 344, but he only took 1 sack. Well, again, and we talk about this, the Vikings' pressure doesn't often get home. They send a lot of it, but they don't get home, so that probably isn't surprising. But 23 of 37, yeah, in this matchup, Minnesota is one of the better defenses in the league. Cousins comes out with that. They would be foolish to bench him on this game. If they bench him after last week, maybe I view it differently. Bijan Robinson does quite well. We know Minnesota does great against outside zone runs, and that's usually what Atlanta does. Bijan goes 22 for 92 and a touchdown. Algier, I know you probably didn't start him. 9 carries. He had a long 25-yard touchdown run to get him to 63 and a score. So if you did start him, you were in. I felt bad. I got a lot wrong this week. I start sits. I got a lot wrong this week. This is one of those weeks. There's 1 or 2 weeks every year, and everything just seems to go on its error. This was not, in theory, a good matchup for Darnell Mooney with the perceived pressure. Throwing to the outsides probably was going to be the thing. He had 3 for 101 in the first half, gets it to 6 for 142 by the end. So if you didn't start Mooney, it's on me. And again, we'll get that better next time. Ray McLeod. My RotoWire teammate, Mario Puig, talks about this. While Kyle Pitts, he did get 6 targets in this game, but Ray McLeod is getting way too many targets. Now, for fantasy, I've got McLeod on a lot of rosters. PPR, you love him. 8 for 98. Great game if you started him. But I don't know what the team isn't getting. You got Kyle Pitts, and you're not weaponizing him. And that's a fundamental problem because Ray McLeod, he just isn't going to make much out of the catches he has. And whereas Pitts would have the ability, if he was used as a slot receiver, which you don't have to classify him as a tight end, just put him in the slot. And they're not really doing that. So again, Pitts at this point, I don't know how you could start him if you got into fantasy playoffs. I have him on a team. It's an important team. Goose egg last week, 1 for 14. Saw there were snaps he wasn't on the field. Last week he was in the 40% range. I don't think you can start him. I think at this point, you're better off just going with some waiver wire and streaming them up and seeing what happens there. Drake London, fine. 5 for 70. Wasn't a great game. Fine enough. You know, you're not going to get 100 yards every game. You're not going to score a touchdown every game. He had 10 targets, so that was fine. Didn't like McLeod as a target ahead of him. But again, Minnesota's a great defense. All right, let's take a quick break to tell you about DraftKings Pick 6.
We're proud to be brought to you by DraftKings Pick 6. So many NFL offerings each week over at Pick 6. Been enjoying playing on the Pick 6 platform each and every week of the NFL season. Think a certain quarterback will throw for more than 300 yards. How about your favorite receiver scoring a touchdown? Check out Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy football and win cash right now with DraftKings. Here's how it works. Just pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. Yards, catches, touchdowns, etc. Lock in those picks and compete against opponents for a shot at huge cash prizes. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use our code ROTOPICK. That's ROTOPICK. Again, ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. If you're a new Pick 6 customer, play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Just use that code, ROTOPICK. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-89-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, thanks my RotoWire teammate Nick Whalen for that nice announcement of the DraftKings Pick 6. We love playing that contest. In the meantime, we are going to our instant reaction, number 3. The Seahawks take control, so to speak, of the NFC West. They win 30-18 over the Cardinals, sweep the Cardinals. So the Cardinals, not so good for the Cardinals right now. But what I will say is with the Rams getting that big win against the Bills, Seahawks are only up a game on the Rams. So it is not the slam dunk, but again, for right now, Seahawks are in the lead, and their defense is playing very well. The offense, we'll talk about that in a minute. Again, the passing game, it sputters. Passing game sputters. Not a lot of consistency in the passing game. Coaching Ryan Grubb, not excited about the passing attack. But here's the story. Zach Charbonnet. So Kenneth Walker hasn't had many good games in the first couple weeks of the season. Defenses have really cut off the spacing they use. And Walker's that guy. He's the boom bust runner. He's the one that's looking for the gap and working with that. Zach Charbonnet steps in. Look, you started him. You loved it. There's a league I needed him. Did not see 22 carries for $134, 2 touchdowns. I didn't see an additional 7 catches for 59 yards. Second leading receiver, caught the most passes on the team, 29 touches, had a 51-yard run in this thing for a touchdown. He just completely dismantled Arizona. And Arizona, look, they don't have a lot of talent. They're a good run defense. They're not great. They're good. And Zach Charbonnet left them in his dust. So some people will have coasted to the fantasy playoffs because they had Zach Charbonnet on the roster, and you love that. Geno Smith, here it is. We talk about it all the time. 24-30, it's great. I mean, look at that. It's like 83% completion. 233, 1 touchdown. If Geno does not have garbage time, it ain't getting done. That's been the case all year. 233 was actually high for him. He was like 221 or less, I think, in 4 of his last 6 games going in. 233 doesn't raise the bar much. He has 1 or fewer touchdowns in all but 2 games this season, I believe. Top of my head. I'm sure I'm right on that, though. Think about it. 1 or 0 touchdowns in all but 2 games, and we are in week 14. So that's not good. Jackson Smith and Jigba continues to be the player you could trust from the receiving group. He goes 5 for 82 and a touchdown, only 5 targets. But again, he has gotten it done for pretty much 6 weeks straight. DK Metcalf, I don't know what to do. 6 targets, 4 for 49. It's fine. It's not what we went out of DK Metcalf. No real ceiling there. So that's been a problem. And again, it's the Ryan Grubb offense. Ryan Grubb the league made adjustments. He's a college dude. You don't make adjustments in college. You talk about it all the time. Either your guys are better than theirs, are wide open, and you roll it out. That game plan works all season. Or your scheme is so good, they're not stopping you. NFL, you got to make adjustments from the middle of week 1, halftime of week 1. And I just don't see it. I just don't see any adjustments that are useful. So Tyler Lockett, I don't know if he's hurt. I know he's 32. I know I was down on him going into the season. He had a good first 4 or 5 games. Sometimes with aging players, they could start a season out hot. And then as their legs kind of wear down, the rest comes with. He goose-egged it. Tyler Lockett hasn't done much in a month. I know I had a bet with one of my RotoWire teammates about his season yardage. I don't remember the exact number, right? We didn't write it down, but I think I said he'd have less than 740 on yards. First half of the year, it looked like he was getting there. Now, I don't know if he gets to 700. It's not good. You can't start Tyler Lockett right now. You start him in the deepest of deep leagues, and you hope he catches a touchdown. You hope he gets a long play. But yeah, goose egg on 1 target. Again, he might be hurt, but he's probably aging, and that's probably the bigger issue there. Outside of that, way to go, Zach Charbonnet. It's a beautiful day for you. Other side of the ball, the Cardinals, a little garbage time for Kyler Murray. He was able to get, if you start him in fantasy, you're fine. 259, a couple touchdowns. He threw 2 picks. Mike McDonald in that offense definitely threw the confusing looks, and Murray fell right into him. The only players of use otherwise, James Conner. After Conner went 7 carries for 8 yards, 18 for 90 in this one, and 4 for 32 and a touchdown through the air. So Conner gets you $122 scrimmage yards and a touchdown. Certainly happy with that. And then Trey McBride didn't have the first many plays 12 for $133. He had about half of that in this game, 7 for 70. But again, who's arguing? Marvin Harrison, look, he had a late catch to give him the 49 yards. He had the game last week, 5 for 70 and a touchdown, and we really advocated him last week. I think that's a ceiling right now. He had the big game early in the season, but it's just not going on. So if you're viewing Marvin Harrison as a flex, fine, start him. If you're expecting big upside, good luck. He'll be great, just not this year. And I blame the offensive coaches and maybe Kyler Murray a bit. Maybe Murray just hasn't been able to get on the same page with him. It is what it is. We liked Michael Wilson. He got an early touchdown catch 41 yards, and that got him 2 for 57 and a touchdown. So if you start him in a desperation, nobody's complaining about that. That's how we kind of looked at that. But yeah, so right now, the Cardinals lost both games to the Seahawks. They're 6-7. Yeah, playoffs are probably done for them, and they're behind the Rams. A miracle, anything can happen. We know how that goes. All right, I'll go over more of this week's reactions after we take a short break. All right, instant reaction number 4. Miami goes back to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and they win 32-26 in overtime against the New York Jets. I talked to some people on the Start Sit show, and one of the mentions I made, and I got a lot wrong. I got a ton wrong today. But I said, these divisional matchups are nuts, and that's no great knowledge. Everybody kind of gets that. But you never know. The Jets have checked out, but I'm like, they may not check out against a divisional opponent because these teams like typically hate each other. And man, the Jets didn't check out. Offensively, they didn't. And so Aaron Rodgers, he was actually moving a little bit, trying to evade pressure. He got sacked 3 times, but he was evading pressure. And Aaron Rodgers goes 27 of 39 for 339, just 1 touchdown. But you'll take it if you had to use him in a super flex league. You weren't counting on a 12-team league anymore. That ship is long sailed. But Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams. And here's the thing. Garrett Wilson had 3 of 4 weeks. He was horrible for fantasy. Not his fault. He's a superstar. But the situation's toxic, right? But I told people, I go, consider him boom bust. You sit Garrett Wilson, you're sitting Garrett Wilson. And yeah, he gets 10 targets, 7 for $114, and 18 points is 18 points. But the floor is so low. And so you consider him boom bust. When you set your lineups, when I say boom bust versus a high floor player, you got to frame it that way. If you need if you're in a game where you're an underdog, you go for that boom bust guy. But if you're in a game where you're like a favorite, sometimes you take the player with the safer floor and you just kind of make sure you win the game that way. Devontae Adams, 11 targets, 9 for $109. He scores. So again, if you played your New York top 2 receivers, you got it done. The running back room, I got this one wrong. I thought Braylon Allen would be the lead back. I thought Isaiah Davis would have a minor. I thought it would almost be like the Breece Hall and Braylon Allen backfield, where Breece Hall was seeing 70-ish% of the work, and Allen the other. Nope, no, wasn't 50-50, complete even. Allen had 11 carries. Davis had 10. Both about 40 yards rushing. Davis got a touchdown. Braylon Allen had a chance. He didn't get one, though. And then receiving game, Allen gets 5 targets. Isaiah Davis gets 6. Now, funny enough, you put these running backs together, 83 rushing yards, 65 receiving yards. So all of a sudden, you got like 150 yards and a touchdown between them. Where was that for Breece Hall? I just don't get it. And that's the quagmire. I just do not understand what happened to Breece Hall. Not his. I mean, clearly the offense is toxic, but the fact that Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis together got it done. No answer. Got no answer for you. But what I'll say is this. If Hall misses time, they're saying they're not shutting him down for the season, but is he really going to play next week? I'd be surprised. We'll see throughout the week. But I think at this point, look, you're splitting the work. You play them both as high-end flexes, low-end running back 2s. I don't think they both get it done every week, but if they're going to get volume, yeah, they have definite value in fantasy. But that's about it. The Miami side, I should have started with them. I didn't. We could do it now. So overtime, it gives Tua a game. Tua didn't do great, and for fantasy, didn't do great in regulation. In regulation, he was probably in the 270 range, 1 touchdown, which is fine. But in overtime. But let's get to regulation. Finally, we have been struggling all year with Achane, Jonnu Smith, eating up all these targets, ancillary guys getting targets. And then Hill and Waddle, 8 targets, 4 targets, 6 targets. Insane. They didn't make that mistake this week. Tyreek gets 14 targets, 10 for $115 and a touchdown. They even gave him a rushing attempt. So Jalen Waddle, 12 targets, 9 for 99. If he had a 100-yard bonus, he just missed. He had a 2-point conversion in there too. So he got you to 20 points in that game, PPR. And again, Tyreek Hill got you to 27.5. So I told people to start them both this week. I was, I didn't think they get the target share, but they've been doing enough. They've been doing enough with what they've had recently where you play them. Achane, look, as a runner, that Miami line is not helping. 14 to 24, he scores a touchdown. But again, Achane gets it done through the air. That's how he gets you. 6 for 45. So 24 fantasy points, 18 fantasy points, PPR. So Achane's great. Achane's top 10 back every week, 7 targets. He's going to get the ball there. That's where he's making his money. You keep rolling with that. No issues at all. Jonnu Smith, regulation, goose egg. Game goes to overtime. All of a sudden, forget Tyreek, forget Waddle. It is now the Jonnu Smith show. In overtime, he catches 3 passes for 44 yards in the game-winning touchdown. So if you started Jonnu Smith and it was the end of regulation, can't pull your hair out if you're me, but you might have pulled your hair out for you. And then after overtime, you're like, oh, I just got 13.4 PPR points. I'm nervous going forward now because the genie's out of the bottle. If they're going to hammer, rightfully so, Hill and Waddle, they need to see the targets. They are the superstars. It needs to be them and everything else functioning off of them. The goose egg for Jonnu Smith is on the table. Now, in the fantasy playoffs, unless you've got a great option, you got to play him. You can't sit him in the fantasy playoffs. He's been red hot for fantasy for 7 weeks? You can't sit him. But understand this outcome's out there. Now that we saw 26 of 47 targets go to Hill and Waddle, that's massive. Jonnu saw 4 targets. It's the way it always should have been. So we'll see what market correction at this point. But at this point, the market correction probably is Jonnu Smith not having the best of fantasy playoffs. But again, if you don't have Kittle, Bowers, a couple others in that conversation, you got to roll with them. I don't know what else to tell you on that. Hey, everybody, Live Golf, a new season of Live Golf Fantasies coming in 2025. New prizes, new ways to win and more. They're coming in the new season. Get ready to play and sign up now at fantasy.livegolf.com. Reaction number 5. The Eagles barely escape with a win against the Carolina Panthers, 22-16. Now, I was holding out hope. The Eagles get a late touchdown, cover the game. Nope. They win it by 6. And Panthers were driving, trying to make it interesting late, trying to win. They actually had Xavier Legette had a long pass. It was inside the 5-yard line, and he couldn't hang on to it, hit the ground. That probably would have set up an upset win for the Panthers. It was well less than a minute left. That was crazy. I'm going to say this. We break these games down. We understand the strengths and weaknesses of teams. All the ancillary players. I understand the offensive linemen, the defensive players, the coaching schemes, how they match up. And I talk about it all the time. When you're doing analysis, you can't analyze using the subliminal switch. And you've heard me talk about it before. Subliminal switch is easy. It's human nature. As an athlete myself, former, I'm older now, you want to say that every opponent is dangerous. And your coaches tell you that. And you want to believe it. But in the back of your mind, you know who you're playing. It is very difficult to get up mentally and emotionally for an opponent that you know you are exponentially better at than, and especially Eagles playing at home. Saquon Barkley did his job, 20 for $124. If you start, I told people with Jalen Hurts, like I had started sit questions about Jalen Hurts. People were asking me, I go, you start Jalen Hurts. He throws for 108 yards, 2 touchdowns, runs for 59 yards of a touchdown. That's why you never sit Jalen Hurts. Was it the Sam Darnold game of 5 touchdowns? No. But when you start Jalen Hurts, you understand he has so many paths to a good fantasy game. And that's what you got to roll with. So many paths. That's the point. And so you start Jalen Hurts. That's why he's a top 3 fantasy quarterback. I'm not talking about the numbers too, but that's why you drafted him as one, because he has multiple outs. And he showed it here. The rushing attack. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Smith gets a touchdown. 37 yards for Smith, 4 catches. Brown, 43, 4 catches. I don't know what to do. They're superstar players. This is a run-based team. They ran the ball 31 times. They passed it 21 times. They obviously, even though they almost lost, they didn't fear it. And so they played as if they were going to win the game, which is fine. They won. That's all that matters. But there are going to be a lot of games they don't have to throw. And so they have again, I think A.J. Brown is tied with a bunch of other best receivers in the league. They all do it differently. It's not going to happen for fantasy. He'll have an occasional game, and that'll be it. So that said, Eagles are in great shape here, 11-2. Lions keep plugging along. See how the home field advantage shakes out. That's what's important. Eagles defense, Chuba Hubbard didn't recommend starting him. And the reason being, Jonathan Brooks is getting more involved. Brooks hurt his knee, non-contact injury, first quarter, terrible. I don't know what's wrong, but they look serious. So if you started Chuba Hubbard, you got 26 carries, you got 5 targets, you got 107 scrimmage yards and a touchdown. You love it, and great job starting him. But I was expecting a timeshare. Didn't happen. Adam Thielen, we said to start him, 9 for $1.02. Nobody else had more than 39 yards through the air. So keep starting Thielen. He's going to have a down game here or there, but he's earned it. You start him in the fantasy playoffs. Got time for a couple comments before we get to Sunday Night Football. Randy, appreciate you being here as always. Scott, I'm glad Sincere McCormick worked out for you and you're up in your game. CD Lamb, you do a good job there. Steve, you have Chase Brown to play and you're down 16. Do you flex Hopkins, Pacheco, or Quentin Johnston? I would say I would go with Pacheco. I just don't think they're going to throw a lot. And Quentin Johnston gets 4 or 5 targets. You need busted coverages. Well, you have Chase Brown. So you're in great shape. So, yeah, just I would go Pacheco. He's going to get enough to get it here. John wants to know about Worthy or Quentin Johnston. Neither's a great play. Zone of the Chargers would kind of make it tough for Worthy. I'd probably give Quentin Johnston a whirl here. Trust your gut. Randy, yeah, Garendo hurt his foot. I should have said that. End of the game, he hurts his foot. He's going off to the tent. The game was out of hand, so we don't know what the real status is. But Randy picked us up here. MRI tomorrow for a possible foot sprain. Patrick Taylor or Israel Abanikanda. Abanikanda is exceptionally more talented, but he doesn't know the offense. And Shanahan's offense is not easy to pick up. So Patrick Taylor's not a good running back, but he had 4.4 yards per carry with the Packers last year. I would think with the fantasy playoffs coming up, I would think Patrick Taylor probably is a better pickup right now. I don't know how quickly Abanikanda can acclimate. So that's the issue. I would say the upside plays Abanikanda, but if he doesn't get the offense, that Shanahan's zone run, it could be problematic. So right now, based on Taylor knowing the offense, I would lean toward him. But I get it, Abanikanda is so much more talented. Hey, RotoWire covers all the fantasy sports. You get a free 2-day trial. You don't even need a credit card. You can go check out everything we got. You can go to rotowire.com/pod. Check it out for 2 days. If you like it, join the team. If not, we're just glad you stopped by and took a look. We want to thank our sponsors, DraftKings, Pick 6, and Live Golf. And thank you to everyone for listening. You can come back next week for another edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast.